Imagine this. An institution that's supposed to push the whole country forward.
Right. Designed for national progress.
But at the very same time, it's deeply, deeply rooted in local concerns. It's like this built-in tug-of-war inside the American Congress.
It really is. And understanding that tension, that duality, is pretty much key to understanding how it all functions.
Yeah, exactly. So today, we're digging into Congress and its members. It's widely seen as, well, the go-to academic work on this.
It's definitely the standard text.
Yeah.
Been around for a while, updated many times.
Our aim here is to pull out the really crucial insights. How does this vital branch of government actually work? Especially focusing on that dual nature you mentioned.
The idea of the two Congresses.
Exactly. Congress as this national lawmaking body versus Congress as basically a collection of individual politicians trying to get reelected.
That's the core tension we'll be exploring.
And this approach reminds me a bit of some resources out there, like the Mindful Moments YouTube channel. They use AI to analyze complex books and really pull out the core ideas, get you thinking.
Distilling complexity. That's sort of what we're aiming for here, too. Getting to the heart of how Congress operates based on this foundational text.
Let's start with a bit of history. The book touches on this, how Congress wasn't just created fully formed.
Not at all. The Constitution laid the groundwork, sure. The founders had intentions. But Congress has evolved significantly over time.
Through reforms, adaptations.
Exactly. Practical needs, political shifts.
Yeah.
They've all shaped the institution we see today. It's been a continuous process of adaptation, really.
So let's talk about the members part of Congress and its members. How do people actually get there? The book talks about, recruitment, nomination, elections.
It's a whole sequence. And it starts way before Election Day.
And for the House of Representatives specifically, the way district lines are drawn, that can give some candidates a huge leg up, right?
Oh, absolutely. Gerrymandering, or even just how populations shift, means districting can profoundly impact how competitive an election is.
And who gets represented, ultimately.
Precisely. And then there's the money aspect. Campaign finance is a massive factor.
Yeah, the book gets into the influence of money in campaigns. It shapes who can run, who wins.
It certainly plays a significant role. Access, visibility, it all costs money.
Then we get to the voters. The book has this striking statistic. Something like 90% of voters are pretty strongly party-centered.
That's a huge factor, especially now. It contributes significantly to the polarization we see. Voters are often deciding based on party label more than individual candidates.
But the members themselves, they have to navigate this, right? The book talks about hill styles and home styles.
Yes, that's a key concept. How a member operates in Washington, their legislative focus, their committee work, that's their hill style.
And the home style.
That's about connecting with constituents back in the district or state. Town halls, casework, local events.
Yeah.
It's about showing you're attentive to their needs, cultivating that image for re-election.
So they're constantly switching between these two modes, these two political worlds.
It's a constant balancing act. Serving the national interest or their party's interest, while always keeping an eye on the next election back home. That shapes everything.
Okay, so they get elected, they have these dual pressures. How does Congress actually organize itself to, get stuff done, make laws?
Well, it relies heavily on internal organization. Leadership structures are critical in both the House and the Senate.
How do leaders manage that? It seems like herding cats, coordinating hundreds of ambitious individuals.
It takes a lot of skill. Leaders have to balance pushing the party's agenda, managing floor time, negotiating compromises, all while keeping their own members relatively happy.
So they use formal rules, but also informal persuasion.
Definitely. Party discipline, committee assignments, controlling the legislative calendar. These are tools. But so is personal influence, negotiation, building coalitions.
And a huge part of that structure is the committee system. The book calls them the workshops of Congress. That sounds about right.
It's a perfect description. That's where the detailed legislative work, the scrutiny, the expertise really happens.
What are the main types of committees?
You've got your standing committees. Those are the permanent ones focused on specific policy areas like agriculture or foreign relations. Then there are select committees, often temporary, set up for a specific purpose or investigation.
Like the January 6th committee.
Exactly. Or historically, things like Watergate. Then you have joint committees with members from both the House and Senate. And finally, conference committees.
Those are the ones that iron out differences between House and Senate versions of a bill.
Precisely. They're crucial for getting a single piece of legislation passed by both chambers.
And getting assigned to the right committee must be a huge deal for a member's career and influence.
Immense. It affects their ability to shape policy in areas they care about, serve their constituents' interests, and even raise their own profile. The assignment process itself is quite complex.
The book mentions how the system adapts too, like creating the Homeland Security Committees after 9/11.
Yes, that's a prime example of Congress reorganizing itself to meet new national challenges. It shows the structure isn't totally rigid.
Okay, so let's follow a bill. Someone introduces an idea. What's the typical journey? It sounds complicated.
It certainly can be. It usually starts in a committee, goes through hearings, markups. If it gets voted out, it goes to the floor.
And in the House, the Rules Committee plays a big role here, right?
A very powerful role. They set the terms for debate, how long, what kind of amendments are allowed.
Yeah.
They can really shape the fate of a bill before it even reaches the full House.
And then floor procedures in both the House and Senate, debates, votes.
Right. And if the House and Senate pass different versions, that's when you might need that conference committee we talked about to reconcile them. It's a multi-stage process with many potential roadblocks.
When an individual member has to decide, okay, how am I voting on this? What goes into that decision? It can't just be their personal opinion.
Rarely just that. Multiple factors are usually in play. Their party's position is often huge, especially in recent years.
The party whip system and all that.
Yes. Then there's their own ideology. What do they fundamentally believe? What are the interests and opinions of their constituents back home? That home-style pressure.
And what about the president?
The relationship with the White House is definitely a factor. Presidential popularity, lobbying from the administration, it all plays a role.
So it's a mix of party, ideology, constituents, the president.
And sometimes legislative bargaining. Log rolling, you support my bill, I'll support yours. Building coalitions often involves these kinds of trade-offs. Thinking about how these pieces fit together, resources like Mindful Moments and our podcast really try to offer ways to grasp these complex interactions concisely.
Right, connecting the dots. Which brings us neatly to Congress's relationship with the other branches. The book points out this kind of built-in tension with the presidency.
Well, they share powers constitutionally, making laws, funding the government, appointments, treaties. Congress and the president have to work together, but they often have different priorities or constituencies.
So you get things like veto bargaining. The president threatens a veto to shape the bill.
Exactly. Or Congress passes something knowing the president might veto it to make a political point. And Congress has oversight powers, too, keeping an eye on how the executive branch implements laws.
There's that concept mentioned, the two presidencies. What's that about?
It's the idea, or thesis, that presidents tend to be more powerful and face less opposition from Congress in foreign policy compared to domestic policy.
Interesting. And Congress doesn't just interact with the president, but the whole federal bureaucracy, too.
Absolutely crucial. Congress actually creates the structure of the executive branch departments and agencies.
Through legislation.
Yes. And the Senate has the power to confirm presidential appointments, cabinet secretaries, judges, ambassadors. Plus, Congress oversees the rules and regulations that agencies create. They hold hearings, control budgets. That's a major check on bureaucratic power.
Okay, we've covered the structure, the players, the procedures, the external relationships. How does this all translate into actual policy? The book mentions some big recent laws.
Yeah, if you look at major legislation like, say, the Inflation Reduction Act or the CGPS and Science Act or the American Rescue Plan, you can really see these dynamics at play.
How so?
Well, you see the influence of party control, the negotiations between the House and Senate, the compromises needed to get enough votes, the role of committees in shaping the details, and the interactions with the White House agenda.
And the budget process must be central to all this.
Hugely central. Deciding how to raise and spend money is arguably one of the most important things Congress does. It involves pretty much every stakeholder imaginable and reflects the core priorities and conflicts within the government.
So, if you had to boil it down, what are the absolute must-know takeaways from Congress and its members for someone trying to understand this institution?
Okay, several things jump out. First, that core tension. National lawmaking versus local representation. It's always there.
Right. The two Congresses.
Second, electoral pressures are incredibly powerful. The need to get reelected shapes so much of members' behavior. Third, internally, committee assignments and leadership positions are where a lot of the power lies.
Got it. What else?
Fourth, Senate rules, like the filibuster, can give significant power to minorities, making consensus harder but protecting against simple majority rule. Fifth, party polarization is undeniable and affects everything from agenda setting to voting.
Yeah, that seems unavoidable to mention.
Sixth, those relationships with the president and the bureaucracy are vital. Congress doesn't operate in a vacuum.
It's easy to get cynical and just say Congress is broken or inefficient, but the book kind of pushes back on that simple view.
It does. It suggests that some of the slowness, the friction, is actually part of the design. The founders intended for there to be checks and balances, to prevent hasty decisions, to force deliberation and protect minorities.
So the inefficiency isn't just a bug, it's partly a feature.
You could say that. Now, the debate today is whether that intended friction, especially with high polarization, has become too much, leading to gridlock. But the fundamental constitutional role of Congress as the representative lawmaking body, that remains essential.
Understanding all this complexity, it really matters for everyone, doesn't it? Not just Beltway insiders. You start to see why your own representatives act the way they do.
Exactly. You see the competing pressures they're under, navigating that Hill style and home style.
Well, this has been really insightful.
To keep exploring critical insights like these and to engage with more thought-provoking analysis, we hope you'll subscribe and maybe share this with others who might find it useful.
Yeah, definitely. And if you want to go deeper into the source material itself, there's a link to the book Congress and Its Members in our show notes.
Most importantly, though, just keep thinking critically about these forces that shape our government and our world.
Absolutely. And maybe a final thought to leave folks with. Given all these inherent tensions we've talked about, especially between national and local focus, how might Congress's structure need to adapt, or how might it evolve as our politics seem to become more and more nationalized?
That's a big question for the future.